Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. Um, we're just going to give it just a moment as for folks to enter the webinar, and we'll just get started in just a minute. Great. Looks like we've got a good number of folks who've been able to enter. So in the interest of time, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to our webinar today. My name is Callie Shumitz. I am Vice President for External Relations with the Maryland Center on Economic Policy, and I'll be moderating our conversation today. We have a great, very knowledgeable panel. Just a little bit about the Maryland Center on Economic Policy. If you're not already familiar with us, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan research and advocacy organization. We focus primarily on state level policy in Maryland. And we're founded in the belief that all Marylanders should be able to achieve their full potential in a healthy economy that offers a widely shared and rising standard of living. So a big part of getting there and reaching that vision is ensuring that everyone has access to safe, stable, and affordable housing. So today we're focusing on one piece of the housing puzzle, and that is homeownership. So I think most folks know that owning a home can provide greater stability, a chance to build wealth. But too many Marylanders are really shut out of that opportunity because of high housing prices. And there's others who have maybe cleared that hurdle and gotten to the point of owning a home, but then face the risk of losing their home when they encounter financial hardship. So those are what we'll be really talking about today is what the state of homeownership is in Maryland and what are some policies that are in place that can help people and what new policies we could look at in the future to kind of improve things for Maryland families. So our panelists today, I'm excited to be joined by Beth Jacobson, who is a homeowner advocate for foreclosure prevention. Dorothea Parker, who is a housing developer with Housing Initiative Partnership, which is a nonprofit affordable housing developer, and she focuses on Prince George's County. And Taneeka Richardson works with me at Maryland Center on Economic Policy. She is a policy analyst, and housing policy is one of her areas of focus. So just some quick housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared out afterwards, along with any slides, links, materials that are shared during the webinar. And then we will be leaving some time for questions at the end. So if you have questions, you could submit them at any time using the Q&A function in Zoom. It should be at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So before we kind of dive into the meat of our conversation, I just would like to invite each of our panelists to share a bit more about your background and what brings you to this work. So Beth, can we start with you?
Certainly. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this forum. I have been in the mortgage industry since 1999 and have over 25 years of experience in the legal industry. I am co-owner of Strategic Housing Solutions with Liz Johnson. We are a not-for-profit that provides options and strategies for borrowers struggling to make their payments. We look for ways to level the field to give homeowners defensives to foreclosure and opportunities for offensive moves against servicers and their attorneys. I blew the whistle on my former employer, Wells Fargo, for its reverse redlining, resulting in a $175 million settlement with the Department of Justice. I've been advocating for homeowners facing foreclosure for the past 15 years, combining my experience as a paralegal and working in the mortgage industry. I received a special U.S. congressional recognition for advocating for Maryland homeowners. I advocate for homeowners via mediation and working with their attorneys to defend homeowners' rights in court against foreclosures. I've been admitted as an expert, not just in Maryland, but in multiple states. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dorothea.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And welcome to everyone. My name is Dorothea Parker. I'm the housing developer for Housing Initiative Partnership, also known as HIP. We are a nonprofit affordable housing developer and a HUD approved housing counseling agency. On the development side of HIP, we have about 300 multifamily units, and we are managing partner on those units. On other multifamily deals, we act as like the nonprofit developer in partnership. We also have single family that we do, and we also have the counseling side. So, been in development for around 3 years, but have an extensive nonprofit background. So, about 10 years in nonprofit.
Great. Thank you. And Taneeka.
Yes, thank you, Kelly. So with MedSep, I've been the primary person on the team that handles health policy for 6 years now. I think 6 years this May, doesn't seem like it. Prior to coming to MedSep, I worked as a housing counselor for the Baltimore Regional Housing Partnership for about roughly almost 5 years there. And I got into that work just through lived experiences and being one of the initial voucher holders back when the program first started. So that's kind of what drew my passion into health policy and how I got here today.
Great. Thank you, Taneeka. So I think the place to start this conversation is to talk a little bit about where we are now, and how current federal and state policies are affecting homeowners, as well as the people who are hoping to become homeowners. So going back to you, Taneeka, can you kind of paint us a picture of the state of homeownership in Maryland, and are there any kind of recent federal or state policy changes that really hold promise for expanding affordable homeownership in Maryland?
Yeah, sure, Kelly. Thanks for that question. So anytime I'm talking about housing policy, I like to just kind of go back to COVID a little bit. Even though for most folks probably on this call or people that's watching the video back, I probably don't have to tell you that in the state of Maryland, we had issues with housing affordability even before COVID, right? COVID just kind of took the mask off a little bit and kind of made everybody kind of pay attention to the housing crisis that we have in the state. Um, but since then, since COVID, right, we have continued to see dramatic price increases. Production has slowed down for a number of reasons that you'll hear about in this panel, all of which has continued to affect affordability for homes, okay? Especially for the middle and low income residents. Um, we continue to see, what we call like the working class continues to struggle with the quote unquote American dream. Okay. When we tend to look at like central Maryland, particularly counties like Montgomery, Howard, and Prince George's County, we know that these counties, despite being affluent counties, are still struggling with price affordability as well. And then when you look to, our Eastern Shore and our Western Shore, like those counties are also struggling with homeownership affordability, be it for different reasons, be it, a lack of investment, infrastructure issues. Those counties are still having the same issues when it comes to homeownership affordability. As of about January of last year, the current Maryland homeownership rate, I should say, was roughly about 68%. And that is down from 72% in 2020, and it's also which is down from 71% just in 2023, right? So we continue to see this downward trend when it comes to homeownership for a number of reasons. Okay. And then I want to just touch on costs as well. So about right now, according to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, we know that about 32% of Maryland household income earners are, income burdened, house burden, which I should say, which is folks that are paying more than 30% of their household income to their housing costs, and about 77% of extremely low income Marylanders are what we would call house income burden. Okay, and again, when you put all this together, with the lack of income, the lack of availability, that's when you tend to see like the access gaps. But to touch on to any policies right now, like the most promising policy is still kind of fairly new, which Governor Moore just signed into last year with the Housing Expansion and Affordability Act. And I'm pretty sure some of our other panelists might touch on that a little bit as well. It's only about a year old, so it's still kind of being rolled out. It's not too much really data that we can have from that, but when it passed, a lot of folks were excited, depending on what side of the fence you were on with your opinions on that. But the idea around the Housing Expansion and Affordability Act is that it will give developers, bonuses or density bonuses to be able to, build more as long as they're agreeing to make homes more affordable.
Thank you. So I think we know that even if there's some promising things on the horizon, there's a lot of the current policies aren't working well for everyone. So I'd like to go to Beth next and hear where do you see current policies falling short in protecting homeowners who are in times of economic stress, and what legislative improvements do you advocate for?
Thank you. There is a new threat out there to homeowners across the country called zombie mortgages. These mortgages are as scary as the name suggests. These are generally second mortgages, such as home equity loans, that were originated back in the early 2000s. For example, consumers would borrow money through a second loan to pull equity out of their home via cash, or to use a second mortgage to purchase a home without putting any cash down. The Great Recession hit end of 2007, 2008, and the mortgage industry imploded. The banks were bailed out, but homeowners were not. Borrowers struggled making their payments and reached out to their loan servicers to modify their loans under HAMP and other various loan modification programs. Equity in homes vanished, which is where we get the term that homes are underwater. Many borrowers mistakenly thought their second mortgage was modified with the first mortgage. These second mortgage servicers did not issue monthly mortgage statements as required by federal law. The National Mortgage Settlement in 2012 required that many of these second mortgages to be forgiven. As there was no equity in these homes, the second mortgage had no incentive to foreclose, as any funds would go off to pay off the first mortgage. Over the past 15 to 20 years, these second mortgages were sold multiple times on the secondary market to various vulture debt buyers for literally pennies on the dollar. COVID happened, interest rates plummeted, home prices soared, resulting in equity for homeowners. The second mortgages that have laid dormant for 15 years raised from the dead like a zombie. Borrowers began receiving threatening letters from unknown debt collectors on a mortgage that they had not received monthly mortgage statements on for the past 15 years. Many borrowers ignored these letters, thinking that they were scams. These debt collectors illegally added 15 years of interest and fees to these loans. For example, a loan originated in 2006 for $60,000 ballooned in 2025 to $150,000 with illegal interest, fees, and costs. Maryland had an opportunity this past legislative session to address the issues of zombie mortgages foreclosing on borrowers. These zombie mortgages are foreclosing on borrowers when the first mortgage is being timely paid, but evicting homeowners from their homes. Maryland could have added a statute of limitations to the law that would have prohibited these zombie mortgages from foreclosing. Maryland is one of only 3 states in the nation that do not have a statute of limitation on foreclosures. New York has a 6-year statute of limitation on foreclosures, and the governor of Connecticut just this week signed into law a 10-year statute of limitation to stop zombie mortgages. Maryland has refused to mandate a statute of limitations. Maryland had the opportunity this past legislative session to continue to require that zombie mortgages, like all other mortgage purchasers, obtain a mortgage lender license, a law that has been on the books for 30 years. Instead, Maryland passed a law this past session that Governor Moore signed that exempted these zombie mortgages from being licensed, making it even easier for these predatory mortgages to foreclose on Maryland homeowners. Other states are working to stop zombie mortgages, while Maryland, on the other hand, has made it even easier for zombie mortgages to foreclose. Over the past several years, Maryland has loosened the laws surrounding foreclosure mediations to the benefit of the mortgage companies while causing harm to the borrowers. Maryland could have acted in the best interest of homeowners by strengthening the mediation requirements and processes to benefit the homeowner, but failed to do so. Maryland courts routinely ignore borrowers' rights by rubber stamping denials to motions filed by the borrower and green-lighting the bank to move to foreclosure. The process is difficult for homeowners to navigate, and judges tend to view borrowers in foreclosure as deadbeats, when the reality is it's the servicers and the lenders that fail to comply with federal law regarding modifications. It's the servicers and their attorneys that submit fraudulent documents, and defaults are caused by predatory loans. The substitute trustees and the lenders fail to provide standing in foreclosure cases. The question that needs to be answered is, why are Maryland legislators and the governor siding with the banking lobby over Maryland homeowners when it comes to foreclosures? Thank you.
That's definitely important for folks to stay aware of, and thank you for sharing all that background. Dorothea, I'd like to pose a kind of similar question to you. I know you're kind of in a different area of working on housing. So how are recent state and federal policy shift impacting the Housing Initiative Partnership's ability to develop affordable housing projects in Prince George's County?
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, there are a lot of policies out there, like Taneeka mentioned. There is the Housing Expansion and Affordability Act in 2024. It's new. We have the Community Investment Tax Credit and the State Revitalization Funds. Those are out there. And a little bit about that. That grant is supposed to help nonprofits and community investment, pre-development work, and to help leverage private donations. We have technical assistance grants, and for homeowners that are looking to purchase, they have the Pathway to Purchase program. So we have some things put in place to help nonprofits to be able to develop. But where I see we have like the most challenges in this, we have the most challenges in this space is that it is it's expensive. It's very expensive. So even with certain policies and mandates, tax credits and down payment assistance costs, it's just still out of reach for us as developers and also homeowners that are looking to purchase, because we have such stiff competition. So nonprofits are in direct competition with developers, for-profit developers, and we know that they can bring the cash up front, which is a lot more attractive. With some of these different policies, there are contingencies with it. We have to have certain times, a window to close on. Like there are different hurdles that we have to go through as a nonprofit. Coming in as a pre-investor, they may not necessarily have that because they are able to put the cash down. Nonprofits also, we're seeing that the price with the tariff and things like that, the price to build, the materials to build is a lot more expensive now. We're a part of a stabilization cohort that I sat in with maybe a week and a half ago. And one of the participants there, she mentioned that she has a relationship with a nonprofit, and a nonprofit with that organization supplies all of the flooring. In the grand scheme of things, like that's just one part of development, but it is something that in the nonprofit sector, we're just trying to figure this out. We're trying to figure out how to be creative. We're creative in these spaces anyway, but we have to be like a lot more creative, even with the support of some of the policies that have been that have came out of Prince George's County, which we're really grateful for. But we're strengthening partnerships. So we may not be able to be the managing partner on our own. We may have to partnership with another organization or with for-profit developers who are also looking to do good in the community. They have a like mind for affordable housing. So we may partnership with them in that deal. So all in all, what we're seeing is that we have some policies in place, but these are just extremely expensive. It is extremely competitive right now. It's just an interesting time. And then on the other side of that, we also are very conscious about developer fees. Developer fees are very expensive. It's expensive to build. What I was able to projects I was able to build 2.5, 3 years ago are almost 30% more to do the same work. It's more expensive to purchase the land, to purchase the home, and then it's actually more expensive to rehab it and get it back out to a community that cannot take on that cost burden because we still need to sell it back at an affordable rate. So.
Sticking with the topic of development for just a moment, follow up for you, Dorothea. Could you just you touched on this a little bit, but could you share a bit more about how your organization works with community members and government partners as you're trying to increase the availability of affordable housing? And in particular, how do you navigate and work with the local zoning, or I know a lot of times there can be community resistance to affordable housing projects when you're trying to still maintain like really um, good quality homes and get something to uh, that folks can afford.
Yeah, definitely. Partnership, partnership, partnership. That is where we have been really excelling. We have been reaching across the aisle. We have conversations with community members, local government. We have conversations with other nonprofit communities that are doing similar work that we're doing. We're learning from one another. We are just really sharing ideas. I think with the strain that this particular climate has put on affordable housing as a whole, it has broadened the conversation. Like, we're not operating in silo. We have to reach across the aisle. We have to have organic conversations with other nonprofits. We have to be very truthful upfront with government officials and council members, and we're appreciative to have their ears to be able to share what the current climate of housing is. When we are in a community, I will say that our product speaks. So even when we have first-time home buyers, so I did have a slide, but we can pull that up right after if you would like. When we do build and we work with first-time home buyers on our single-family acquisition side, we do new construction and we also do acquisition and rehab. We are very conscious of the product that we're putting out. So if you go down just a little bit, right here, thank you. Go up one side. This is an example of one of the homes that we recently sold, and that home was sold in June this month. So we recently closed on that. This was for a first-time home buyer. She earned 80% AMI or less, and her story was very interesting. She had been looking in Prince George's County. She had been looking in Washington, D.C. She had been expanding her search to Montgomery County. Wherever she could find a home, she was just willing to go anywhere. So what that taught us is that people, they're no longer able to just stay in the comfort zone that they have been. Like, if they know a county, they're looking anywhere. They're willing to go across state lines. And as a Maryland resident, we don't want to lose residents. We want to attract residents in, but the affordability is an issue with them. So products like HIP Home, the HIP Homes program, it creates a space for first-time home buyers to move in. And what I'm speaking to is the quality of the home. So it's much more expensive to develop, But when she walked into this home, she actually had her mom come in with her, and she said, I don't need to see anything else. Because her challenge was she was able to find homes in her price range, but they weren't turnkey ready. The quality of the homes, they had a lot of health and safety hazards presented in that particular space, or the ones that were habitable, they were unaffordable. So when she came across this hip product, she was just very excited. The home sat on the market less than 24 hours before contracts came in. And what that says is that it's just a great need in a community. There's just not enough. So if we ever really have a chance or a floor to speak, it would be, we just need more. The community is not resistant to what we're doing. They're asking for more of what we're doing.
Great. Thank you for sharing that story. That's really powerful example of the work you're doing in the community. Beth, I'd like to turn back to you. As you're assisting homeowners, what have you seen that's really helpful for folks, that's kind of proactive outreach or legal tools that really help protect homeowners and help them maybe even before a crisis hits?
Well, I don't want to keep sounding so negative about what we don't have, but that's the reality. It's difficult to target homeowners that are struggling with their mortgage payment because there's no public information available as to who those borrowers are. Borrowers receive what's called a notice of intent to foreclose, which is the first mandated notice issued to borrowers when they miss a mortgage payment. And I understand for privacy reasons that information is not given out. But for example, as our not-for-profit Strategic Housing Solutions, we don't know how to reach those borrowers if they're struggling. The time to reach borrowers to ensure a likelihood of success is at the very beginning when they first struggle with their payments. But as I stated, there's no way to target these borrowers. I believe that Maryland needs to provide more education to homeowners so that homeowners know their rights and available options. The tools to build a defense to foreclosure and to mitigate foreclosure is not provided by Maryland. Maryland tends to only educate borrowers on the foreclosure timeline, which is important. That's an important aspect. However, the borrower needs to know what they need to do to obtain positive results, such as saving their home from foreclosure. Maryland's message is to just reach out to the servicer. This does not help struggling homeowners when the servicer's goal is to foreclose on their home. And I'm not being flip in that statement. I've been in the mortgage industry for over 20 years, and many mortgage servicers do not comply with the law as to loss mitigation. These servicers are dual tracking borrowers on a regular basis, which is prohibited under RESPA, federal law. Servicers routinely, I'm struggling on that word, routinely fail to comply with RESPA as to the process to evaluate an application for loan modification, which includes a borrower the opportunity to appeal any denial. Borrowers don't know the process, and Maryland has not provided any information for a borrower to even know if the servicer has failed to comply with the law. That being said, there's a lot of housing counselors out there, and my hat's off to them. They do help borrowers submit an application for modification. My point is these servicers don't comply with the law. So the borrower needs to know, okay, I'm denied for a loan modification. Was it a proper denial? Did the servicer state the name of the investor? Did the servicer state the reason why I was denied? Did the servicer allow me to appeal the denial, which is federally required? But I've seen lately in more cases, the servicers are not allowing the borrower that opportunity. There was no agency, whether state or federal, that is enforcing the law as to loss mitigation under RESPA. There are laws out there to prevent this abuse by servicers, but homeowners do not know what the laws are, and there is no one to complain about these violations who will enforce the law. Maryland courts don't generally enforce the law when it comes to these violations because the borrower does not know how to present the legal argument to the courts. Attorneys tend to just state to borrowers, just file a bankruptcy. On the federal side, Trump has dismantled the CFPB and clawed back on current consent judgments to the benefit of the banks. Maryland homeowners are left to flounder in their attempt to save their home from foreclosure. However, there was one bright spot in Prince George's County in District 8. Council Chair Ed Burrows has provided grant money to Strategic Housing Solutions to assist, advocate, and educate borrowers in distress in District 8 to no cost of those homeowners in District 8. So we're actively trying to get the word out. And I would say the biggest issue for Maryland homeowners is they don't know what resources are available because the word is not getting out there. And if somebody's struggling with their mortgage, it's not something they're going to advertise to their neighbor. They're not going to go next door to their neighbor to say, hey, I'm struggling. Who do you suggest I go to? So we need to get the word out to the legislatures, to the local council people, to the mayors, to churches, to groups that are out there where a homeowner may go when they're struggling and say, okay, here are some resources so that you can go ahead and reach out to them with the goal to save their house. When I get involved with borrowers in foreclosure, if we get involved at the very beginning, I would say, assuming that the borrower does have an income, there's better than a 90% chance that we can save the home. The problem is borrowers, a lot of them tend to stick their head in the sand and they don't proactively move forward. So if anybody out there is hearing the message, it is sooner rather than later. You need to reach out to get the resources you need to save your home. Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up to that. I know for renters, there's often like kind of like a central place they can get that kind of know your rights information, either from their county or now we're working on setting that up on the statewide level. Does anything like that exist for foreclosure help right now in Maryland?
No, the only entity that's out there is the Office of the Office of Consumer Regulation. They used to be the old DLLR, it's OFR, Office of Financial Regulation now. The problem is they don't get involved in individual cases. They can send out information, but again, the information they tend to send out is just the timeline of foreclosure in the state of Maryland. And there's very few attorneys in Maryland that will fight foreclosures. I would say probably less than 5 attorneys, because attorneys, as I said, tend to just suggest to go into bankruptcy. And so it's really sad that there are not enough resources out there for homeowners, because as I said, if you get at the beginning when the homeowner is struggling, 9 times out of 10, you can resolve the situation without a foreclosure action even being filed. And one other statistics I do want to state is a lot of people are thinking that foreclosure process, that was like way before COVID. It's not happening right now. Maryland has consistently been in the top 10, often number 2 in the country in foreclosures. It is a real serious problem that's happening right now.
Can I just add that I agree with Beth that homeowners tend to, we did some studies, and homeowners tend to not be very open to have this type of discussion about being behind on their mortgages and facing foreclosure. And that's why housing counseling is so important. So even at the purchase table, because we do pre-purchase housing counseling, we should have these discussions, and we do have these discussions about what if you find yourself with a decrease or loss of income? You know, what does it look like for your house if you actually are not able to continue on with your mortgage payment? What resources and things are available to you to help assist you? And we do employ them to kind of take proactive actions. Don't linger. You know, this is a tough situation. I know you're trying to wrap your head around what to do and what's next, but take action. Don't, sit in it, because it doesn't get better that way. It continues to progressively get worse. And information, getting it out to the people, county level, nonprofit level, community churches, and things like that are a great way to do it. And I do, coming from a nonprofit background, I do think being in the community helps. Having information about the shiny programs are always great. People love to see them, but also having information ready and available for people that may be in crises, that may need that additional information. So housing counseling is so important. before and after purchase.
Thank you for adding that. So I guess shifting gears a little bit. So Taneeka, kind of what do you see in your work in terms of barriers that nonprofits, developers, housing counselors, all these different folks working in this space, what barriers are they encountering when implementing new policy tools, and how can folks who are on the advocacy side, like you and all of the coalitions you work with, help kind of bridge those gaps?
Yeah, sure. So, particularly on a local level, which I didn't mention earlier in my response, one of the things that some of the local counties are doing is, kind of like retooling their zoning, particularly like their single family zoning neighborhoods to allow for what we call like the missing middle home developments. I know the folks who don't know on the call, I'm in Howard County, and I know I was just on a commission here last year in the fall where we were coming to the table to kind of discuss like development here in the Mississippi Middle. Because if you guys are familiar with the landscape in Howard County, if you ask certain people, they will tell you we have zero space to build, right? Because like literally like half of the county is zoned to like farmland and stuff. But nonetheless, that's another conversation. I see my developer friend laughing. But for folks who don't know, like the Mississippi Middle, it's really defined as the development. They kind of focus on duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, ADUs, like those type of homes. So to go back to the question that Kelly just asked me when it comes to some barriers that we are seeing, when you hear those type of homes, wanted to be built, that we had to like legislate that to make counties, allow that in single family zoning, because a lot of already established neighborhoods will push back, right? You get the like not in my backyard type of thing. They don't want to have, high density, and they want to continue to have single family zoning, which depending on who you talk to, single family zoning, some folks will say is, discriminatory in its own practice anyway, right? By excluding other different types of housing for people with different type of income limits. So, that's one type of barrier, right? So we're looking at the zoning. We just heard other folks mention on the call, talk about just the lack of funding and how expensive it is. It would not be remiss upon me to bring up, the current administration and the different tariffs and the cost of steel. And like, I'm just hearing about all other kind of stuff. Mass deportation, right? Like who's going to build these homes, even when we do get a good deal. So we have to kind of look at all of that. Also looking at capacity of like nonprofits, again, just making sure folks have the staff, making sure that we can afford the materials to build the homes. I kind of just mentioned about the different community needs. Some communities say that they don't want it for various reasons. Now, when it comes to folks like myself and other folks listening on the call, like things that, we can really do is, again, to continue to talk to our elected officials about the policies, having real stories, like the story we just heard on this webinar. That is like super touching. I love that, that someone was able to. Unfortunately, they had to kind of go out of the county that they probably knew and loved and called home to be able to afford something. But those are the stories that we need. So if you are an organization that works with the public and you have those stories, definitely get them out to Annapolis when doing session and get those stories in front of the lawmakers, right? Because they need to hear that. They don't want to look at numbers all the time, is what I'm told. A policy person. Coalition building. So we have definitely been approached about forming some type of like statewide homeownership, right? Coalition. It's just an idea right now. We definitely have a renters run, which is Renters Unite in Maryland. I am definitely not opposed to having some type of statewide coalition to come together with, other folks who have the same agenda, the same goals. That is something that we can definitely, discuss. If you guys are interested, definitely reach out to us so we can continue this conversation, before the session starts, right? Another thing is different pilot programs, and again, just looking at different states and seeing what other different states are doing. I know Governor Moore just signed the bill last year. As you guys have heard, it's still fairly new, so there's really no data to report back on that yet. It's still new, but again, continuing to look at what other states have done and seeing how that can be applied here. in Maryland. Okay. And then I'm going to close out and just say again, storytelling. We definitely need more stories. As a housing policy analyst, like that's really my main focus. I cannot tell you how many coalitions I'm in, and it's the same faces. I love you guys, but it's literally the same people over and over and over again doing the same thing. So not only, getting people who have lived experience, but also looking into other nonprofits who are not talking about housing issues that should be, right? So when we're talking about like organizations that focus on education, organizations that focus on healthcare, right? All this stuff is connected together, right? So if folks are homeless, kids can't go to school, they can't, take care of their medical health, like all that stuff is connected, and we all need to be working together versus working in different silos, because we're all servicing the same people. Okay. Yeah, and I'll leave it there.
Great. Thank you. So we're going to shift to audience questions in just a minute. Before we do that, I do have one last question for all the panelists. But if you'd like to submit a question to the panel, please use the Q&A feature. It should be accessible at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And just type your question in there and we will ask it to the panelists. Yeah, so first, this question is for all of you, and I just would like each of you to share your thoughts on kind of where we can build from here, what policy reforms could most effectively reduce disparities in homeownership access for marginalized communities. So I am going to start with Beth for this one.
Well, my focus again is on foreclosure, specifically foreclosure prevention, to keep homeowners in the home they already have. So if somebody's already living in a home, if we put our resources to keeping them in the home, I mean, that's huge, because the other thing, if you look at the statistics, the entities that are purchasing these houses at foreclosures are like BlackRock, these big hedge funds. So it's not that it's going back to somebody that's going to live in the community. They're going to entities, commercial entities. They're going to end up renting these out for usually inflated rental prices. So I think the goal should be that Maryland needs to shift its policy to being so bank friendly and start being friendly to homeowners. I just mentioned a few of the things that could be done, such as a statute of limitations on foreclosures, to require, again, the licensing for these zombie foreclosures that they took away to make it even easier for a zombie foreclosure to happen. And just as Taneeka was talking about, a coalition. So Renters United Maryland, RUM, they have done a lot of great work over the past couple of years to help renters. The problem is when you're dealing with foreclosures, you have such a loose group of people involved because they're homeowners. There's nobody there that's really advocating for them. And then you're going up against a banking lobby, which is huge. So I believe it has to be a grassroots effort by the homeowners, by advocates, to tell the legislators, this is what you need to do. You need to protect Maryland homeowners, and there are tools out there. I have drafted legislation for the past 5 years trying to assist in this process. And that is literally not what I do, but I see I see where the breakdown is. So I'm trying to explain this to the legislators, but the legislators aren't going to listen until the people say, we're going to vote you out until you listen to us. Thank you.
And Dorothea, what policy reforms do you think would be helpful in expanding access?
So we talked about zoning. We talked about putting a modern spin on zoning, how single family zoning could be looked at. We can also look at how we're supporting development, affordable housing development with our permitting process. It takes a while for us to untangle that and to get through that. So those delays kind of kill projects or definitely make them way more expensive than what the initial budgeted cost would be. So that's something we could definitely look at. And then we have those grant programs that are available to nonprofits, such as um, the Housing Investment Fund. We have CDBG, just continuing to support those type of grants and getting that money, those funds out into nonprofits to do the work would be great. I also think that we need to really take a step back and take a look at like the down payment and gap financing when it comes to first time home buyers. We have some programming out here, but with the rising housing costs, what we was able to use and do and get to get people in the homes and help them have like a sustainable growth with their home. We're no longer able to do it with those dollars anymore. So we really need to look at how much we're, putting into the community to help homeowners have access to affordable homes because sometimes is affordable housing has definitely been an issue for quite a while, but with the rising costs and things like that, even for labor, for land, for just to even build, is it will be great for more funding, more access to funding for nonprofits that are doing it so that we can keep these homes affordable. And first right of refusal, that's an initiative that I would like to see expanded and utilized more because it helps us be competitive. Like I said earlier, we're not always able to compete with investors, big banks, and things like that because they bring the cash. They don't have necessarily the restrictions that we have. But having first right of refusal allows us to kind of be on a more equitable playing field.
And Taneeka, I know you're always looking at different policy ideas. That's your job. What would you like to see? You're muted.
Yeah. So she kind of just said it, just piggybacking right off of what she said. I think um one of the key things is definitely zoning. When I was on the Howard County Affordable Housing Development Commission last year, we had developers on the call, and that was one of the really things was just like the permitting process and seeing how local districts can streamline that for them. I forgot what the timeline was, but it definitely did seem like a really long timeline from the idea of proposal to like groundbreaking, like just the amount of time that it takes to build. So that's one thing that I was able to get like from a developer's perspective was the permitting. And then I think another one is like again zoning. And I know we probably sound like broken records, but when it comes to like different counties and things, we all have different needs. So, like you will hear some counties talk about zoning in a sense of, they want to keep things, single family or affordable housing has to be built, quote unquote, near public transportation, that type of stuff. So you having a lot of groups coming out saying like, hey, like, yeah, you like we do need stuff to be built by, public transit, right? But at the same time, we don't want that to be an excuse or a reason to completely kill a deal because this proposed development is not next to public transportation, right? Because a lot of folks are using that to quote unquote discriminate. Then another thing with zoning is when you that came into play like real heavy, even in session and last year too with the governor's bill, when he allowed increasing density irregardless of like school crowding and infrastructure. So that was like a real big thing. I know particularly here in Howard County as well, because we were already kind of, well, not saying we, but like it was already some people fighting against, certain developments being proposed because, Howard County does have a huge overcrowding problem. And I feel like we redistrict schools every 6 months. I know I'm probably over exaggerating, but that's what it feels like because the huge development this stuff that's taking place here. So when it comes to like just looking at all of that, like school crowding, so like if we're having development, like okay, we're building development, like who's responsible, like who's planning to figure out where these kids are going to go to school? Do we need to like, does it need to be near transportation or does it don't? Like I think just continuing to have those conversations in the communities, because I think in that case it's not going to be like one size fits all. And it's going to kind of have to be, to Beth's point, like this grassroots effort and conversations that's going to need to continue going forward.
Great. Thank you. And so we have one question from the audience so far. Encourage audience members to keep submitting questions. We do have a few more minutes to take questions. This one is, I'd say maybe for Beth, but if anyone else has something to add after the question is, what are the licensed home advisors doing to stop foreclosures at the legislative level?
I really can't answer that because I think that was meant for HUD housing counselors.
Okay.
I'm a compliance consultant, an expert witness, an advocate. And so, as I stated, I've done what I have been able to do with my abilities to draft legislation to bring this to the attention of legislators. But unless their constituents are willing to step up to the plate, I have found over the past several years that the legislators pretty much across the board think that foreclosures is a non-issue at the moment, despite the fact that Maryland is usually at least in the top 5 in foreclosures in the country. I think that's the problem. Actually, I'll continue, is that there is nobody there advocating. As Taneeka said, with RUM, a lot of lawyers and community activists got together to help renters. But because when you're dealing with reform for rentals, your opposition is then individual people that own rental properties. So it's just mixed out there, but it's a lot of individual people that own that. It's the opposite when you're dealing with foreclosures, because then you've got the individual people facing foreclosure and you're dealing against attorneys and big banks. And so they have a lobbyist that comes to Maryland's legislators all the time, Bob Eaton, who is advocating for the banks. There's nobody that is showing up really to advocate for homeowners.
I would just piggyback just real quick, because I know like the rental lobbyists, like we do have a lot of folks that come together with renters, and I think the reason how RUM kind of got started is because, you know, when it comes to, they really don't have any rights, right? So when it comes to the time they first get that first eviction notice to the time that they're on the street, it could be a little bit 30 days depending on how backlogged the court is. But I do just want to just say that even with renters and rental policy, it's not just individual landlords. You would be surprised that banks, some developers, some organizations, but particularly the Maryland Real Estate Commission definitely do come out in opposition of every single rental bill that we have proposed. So I'm that's why I kind of mentioned it. Because if it can be done statewide for renters, despite the organized lobbying efforts, I mean, they literally go to office with PowerPoint presentations on why certain rental bills shouldn't pass. You'll be surprised. So we can definitely, you know, if folks have the, you know, the drive and the compassion for it, the same thing can definitely be replicated for homeowners, in my opinion.
That's good to hear.
So we did get another question. It's a multi-part question, so I might break it up a little bit and start with the end of the question. And I'm going to pose this to you, Taneeka, because it's a data question. So are there statistics on kind of how many people are becoming unhoused because of foreclosures? And if also, just to kind of add to that, do you want to talk about kind of the state of available data generally and kind of how we could do better about having data to inform good policy?
Yes. So I have access to drop stuff in the chat, right? Um, so yeah, so one, Kelly made that face. So whether it's renter data or homeownership data, you know, a lot of the state agencies and stuff just don't like to collect data because, to Beth's point, if they don't have the data, you know, they can have this plausible deniability, right? It's no issue, it's no issue. Well, how we know it's not an issue when you guys are not, you know, tracking it, right? But to that point, yes, there is at least, I think nationally, and I think we just got the email today, and I'm gonna share that link. And Kelly, you might have it in front of you, but that's an organization that is tracking data nationally for foreclosure. And I'm trying to find my note. That's tracking data nationally, but then locally you have and I don't know, I'm having a brain fart right now. But locally, yeah, there is a state office that is tracking the state data, because I literally just looked at it the other day. And it's tracking it by county. And for one, I'm going to be personally looking at it to see what the impact is going to be, particularly for the Maryland Central region, to see what the impact is going to be from all the layoffs that kind of happen with the federal workers. Because like right now, for example, when I was just looking at the data, so like January and February of this year, like for example, Prince George's County had like 50 or 60, like notices that went out. It probably was more than that, because I think Baltimore City was 50, and I think like Prince George's County was like 90, right? And that was like just in January. And he just got sworn in the 20th of that month. So like his impact and stuff hasn't even really got caught up in that data yet. But yeah, I'm gonna tell you guys in a second the name of that company. Give me one. I'm gonna tell y'all the website, and I'm gonna put it in the chat for the folks that's on the call.
Is it Axiom?
That may be another one. I don't know Axiom.
Is it Maryland Office of Financial Regulations, OFR? Is it that?
Yeah, I think that's it. That might
It's OFR.
be. You have the link.
Yeah, let me see if I can find the link. But I know
That's
that they're tracking.
just Maryland, and exactly what you said, it's per county. But I think nationally, Axiom does it. So there may be another one that you're looking at.
Great. And then, yeah, another part of this question was about things like tiny homes and kind of new innovative solutions. So Dorothea, I don't know if you have any comments on that and kind of what that looks like right now.
See my smile. Innovation. Yeah, we are being very creative. Tiny homes are a space that I personally haven't dwelt in just yet, but I do know that they are on the table. What is more talked about in development as far as innovation of home is modular homes and what we can do around that. And that is a home that's built in a factory, the foundation is set on site, and the home is literally brought in and the finishes are done on site. But there, in theory, it's the thought of cost saving around that to help keep homes more affordable. We at HIP actually have what we call the Fairmont Heights project, and that is those are 6 homes that are net zero ready homes, and they're all modular homes in Prince George's County. They'll have like the solar panels on them. But that is our way of kind of looking at stepping forward in home development. We also are looking at scatter sites for modular build. And again, that allows us to have some flexibility. We've figured out a way to do it where modular itself can kind of look very industrial, but we're looking at a way to make it aesthetically pleasing where people will want to actually purchase. And you can see that with Fairmont Heights, but we're always evolving that. And then when we're looking at some of the scatter sites with single family, aside from the actual product of a modular home, we look at innovation with weatherization. Like, what are we doing as far as like the utilities and support with that? We take out all the gas and we go electric. Like, we're just always looking at ways to build like a better sustainable product that helps us not where we are right now, but looking for the future towards that.
Great. Thank you so much. We are out of time, unfortunately. This is a fantastic conversation. So I just want to say thank you again to all of our amazing panelists. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. We will send the recording and other follow-up via email. So yeah, thank you again for joining today, and hope everyone is able to stay cool in this heat wave.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.